Hi everybody, my name is Cheyenne and welcome back to my channel, Ask Miss Crow. So today I have a very special true story for all of you. Now, this is not a personal true story, but it is a story that I came across in the Daily Mail and on the news. And I just had to share this story with you because it sounds like some crazy scenario that you would find in a Tarantino movie. Or maybe some of you will remember Weekend at Bernie's. This real plot happened on January 21st, 2022 in Carlow, Ireland. So we're going to jump right into it. Before I get in today's absolutely extraordinary story, please, muchas gracias. I'm thanking you beforehand. Please feel free to hit the subscribe button. Feel free to press like. Feel free to leave comments below. Maybe you want to share some stories that have happened to you that are peculiar, interesting, different, wild, whatever you want. There is no limit. And again, this is all new to me, so I am just starting this. For those of you that are new here, I am stuck in bed for 2 months with my cast, Malone. And so this is what I do on the weekends, filming, talking about some heavy stories that have happened to me to help others, and some wild and fantastical stories from my past, and now some stories that I've found that have actually happened to other people that are absolutely off the wall bonkers. So let's jump right in. So like I said, today's story takes place in Carlow, Ireland. It took place on January 21st, 2022. So we're in this little village, Carlow, Ireland, and there is a post office that is called Hosey's Post Office, and there's a little queue or a little line to get into the post office, which is pretty normal. And it's 11:30 a.m. and all of a sudden, this guy, probably in his early 40s, comes into the post office, and he asks the clerk that he wants to have his uncle's pension and that he's here to collect it because his uncle is sick. Now, the clerk says to him very politely, "Sir, I can't give you the pension because your uncle has to be here. Would it be okay if you brought your uncle back?" And this man says to her, "Well, he's really sick. Are you sure you can't just give me the pension?" And she says, "Well, no, he has to come and collect it himself." So the young man says, "Okay, no problem. I'll bring him back." About an hour later, the same young man comes back. This time he has a friend with him. Now, his friend is on the other side of him, and in between them is a man that has a big hat on down to his eyebrows. A big hat on, floppy hat on. He's got this big sweater, oversized big winter sweater, big jacket on, a scarf wrapped around his neck that's about up to here, and big trousers. And so they're kind of helping him as if he's ill, as if he's very sick, and they are helping him to the post office. Now, like I said before, there is usually a queue or a line outside the post office. And a little girl that was there with her mother makes a pretty interesting remark. She says to her mom, "Why are that man's feet dragging?" So it appeared that the man's shoes, the points of his shoes were dragging on the sidewalk. So he wasn't walking, he was being dragged. The mother also thought this was very peculiar, and she did tell authorities later that this man seemed very ill, really ill, very weird color, looked very, very pale. And it looked like these two men were supporting him or holding him up. Now, the two men in question, we're going to get to them right now. The first one, who is the guy that originally came into the post office to collect his uncle's pension. That's right, his uncle's pension. His name is Declan Hawley, and he is 40 years old, and his uncle is Peter Doyle. So he was there to collect his uncle Peter's pension because Peter was sick. So now here he is with his best friend Garrett, and they are here helping Peter to the post office, which, by the way, is a 5-minute walk from Peter's home, to collect Peter's pension. Now, everybody in the line at the post office just thinks this whole thing is kind of weird. The man's shoes are dragging on the floor. He seems completely out of it. And when they get to the clerk, they say, "Okay," Declan says, "This is my uncle. This is Peter Doyle, and he's here to collect his pension. As you can see, he's very sick." Now, the clerk is alarmed because this man, all you can see are his eyes that are barely open, and she can see the skin. It looks gray. He just looks really, really effing sick. Okay? Very sick. And she says, "Mr. Doyle, are you all right? Are you okay, Mr. Doyle?" And the man doesn't respond. And his nephew, Declan, keeps saying, "He's very sick, ma'am. He's very sick. We need to get him back home." And she goes, "Well, I need to speak to Mr. Doyle. Mr. Doyle, are you okay?" And then suddenly, out of nowhere, the two men drop Peter onto the ground and say, "He's having a heart attack. He's having a heart attack." And they run off. I was bewildered when I read that. I think everybody at the post office was flabbergasted times 100 with crazy sprinkled on top. They call the police, obviously, because what the hell kind of scenario is this? It's pretty sus, as the kids say these days, and this is not your average day at Hosey's post office. The police get there, and it is in fact Mr. Peter Doyle, who is 66, on the ground. But when the medical examiner gets there, he asserts that Mr. Peter Doyle has been dead for several hours. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's rewind to what just happened, to what I just explained to you. This would mean that Declan and Gareth went and got Peter's dead body, dressed him up, bundled him up all nice and cozy, dragged him for 5 minutes to the post office, brought a corpse into the post office, and tried to get his pension this way. And then when they realized that the clerk wasn't buying it and that everybody else was looking at them like they just came out of a 1920s freak show, they just dropped Peter's body and screamed he had a heart attack and ran. So basically, they were trying to, or I should say, Declan was trying to cash in on his poor Uncle Peter's pension and decided in a very Weekend at Bernie's tradition, or an ode to Weekend at Bernie's. If you haven't seen that movie, I suggest you watch it. To bring Uncle Peter's dead body to the post office and pretend that he was very sick and that he needed his pension. But poor Peter had no pulse. He had been long gone. And afterwards, when they did find Declan and his friend Gareth that had run off, they were actually, well, not Gareth, but Declan was beat up by the townspeople. He actually went to his Uncle Peter's funeral and served as pallbearer, and he had a big black eye. And the reason they knew that he belonged in jail, he was up to no good, was because years earlier he had been a severe drug addict and he had tried to steal multiple times from his aunt. And he had a very bad reputation in town. So it surprised absolutely nobody that on this particular morning, Declan probably went over to his Uncle Peter's, found him dead. Peter had probably died of a heart attack that morning, and decided that this would be the perfect opportunity to go to the post office and cash in on his check. And when that didn't work, he brought, in Weekend at Bernie's style, his dead uncle to the post office to pose as a very, very ill man. But it did not work. So I thought that this story was just absolutely bonkers. And dear old Declan's response to all of this, as the investigation is ongoing, is to tell reporters, why would I bring my dead uncle's body to the post office? I'm not cuckoo. I'm not cuckoo. Here you have it, ladies and gentlemen. He's not cuckoo. And on that fine note, I'm going to go finish my coffee, have a croissant. I hope you enjoyed this story. Again, sometimes reality is much stranger than fiction. I want to wish you all a wonderful weekend, and I will see you soon for another weird story, personal story time. It could be wild, could be leaning towards true crime. Who knows? It'll be a surprise. I'll see you all next time.